Microscopic colitis is really from inflammation in the gut, whereas ulcerative colitis not only involves the bugs that live in your gut, the bacteria and other microbes, your immune system has really put itself in the mix as well, and now it's more of an autoimmune condition. So microscopic colitis is one that I have seen reverse with just pure lifestyle, whereas ulcerative colitis, and now again something that's involving the immune system, can often necessitate medication, especially to induce remission.
And just to say really quickly, colitis is just inflammation of your colon. Your colon is inflamed, right? And it's like inflammation's good, but this is like on fire a little too often. It's uncomfortable. You're getting symptoms. You're not feeling well.
Yes. So microscopic colitis is saying, oh, there's a little fire and maybe it got out of control. Maybe we threw a few too many logs on that bonfire and now things are starting to burn in the surroundings, which ends up being first the mucus barrier, the mucosal lining of the colon and of the gut. And then ultimately it can damage the tissue, the gut epithelia. And so there is some of that microscopic inflammation in the lining of the colon. But again, that is something that's a little bit more manageable where we're saying, oh, we're seeing it. So let's try to dampen this fire and reduce this fire so it's more well controlled and it doesn't continue to cause more and more damage. Once you get into ulcerative colitis, there's been a much more significant amount of damage. And we know ulcerative colitis is, again, autoimmune, and it's an umbrella term. And underneath that could be Crohn's, which can be involved in both the small intestine and the large intestine, or just ulcerative colitis itself. So both are under the umbrella of inflammatory bowel disease, rather, where just the bowels are inflamed. And we know there are risk factors for both, but both do involve the bugs that live in the gut. There's more and a higher percentage of that inflammatory bacteria and other microbes. And we now can name them. There are studies now that can name specific strains of bacteria and other microbes that are more abundant in the microbiome of both those with microscopic colitis and with ulcerative colitis. We see more of what's called sulfur-reducing bacteria, where they'll eat up sulfur and they will create a gas called hydrogen sulfide, which can be very irritating to nerves. And the gut is a very abundant bundle of nerves. We see a lot of yeast overgrowth also in those with microscopic colitis and ulcerative colitis. So now we're learning how to kind of play with the bugs, but we also see in both heavy antibiotic use. We see stress as being a large factor. And then the biggest factor tends to be inflammation coming from diet and lifestyle habits and factors. And we do see in studies that ulcerative colitis especially tends to be diagnosed in the 20s and 30s. I do tend to hear a lot of my patients tell me, yeah, after college, I was super stressed, eating like crap in the dorms, partying every night and binge drinking. And then I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And now we're seeing that colon cancer is the fastest rising cancer in those 20 to 50. So keep that inflammation going and those cells start to mutate and turn into cancer. But there's so much that can be done and so much that I love suggesting. Lori, I'd love to hear whether you've worked with those with microscopic colitis or ulcerative colitis and what some of your favorite suggestions are.
You know, I think really it's helping patients understand they oftentimes will come in the heat of a forest fire, so to speak, like you're describing. And it's really important that they get the forest fire under control because you don't try to plant trees in the middle of a forest fire. So that's why I appreciate and help people understand there is absolutely still a place for medication. And sometimes, at least what I've seen, is that people feel shame about being on medication or taking medications appropriately, right? So that is one thing that I would say is number one. And number two, it's really removing the offending agents to get started, right? So we don't want to keep feeding the forest fire. So this is where we talk about removing the dairy, the animal products. And then you have to do a very gentle integration of those plant foods, right? Because they can't just go right on to eating some raw salads and we're just going to cause a lot of, GI upset and continue there.